Welcome to 'Cause We're Nerds, the podcast that covers trends and new releases in comics, movies, video games, board games, and much more. I'm your host, Zach, and with me is my co-host and cousin, Caleb.
Hey everyone.
Today we are diving into Board Game Geek's list of top 100 board games of all time. Narrowing in on only the top 25 games, what makes a good board game, and how many of these would we suggest you try out? Find out these questions and much more on this week's episode of 'Cause We're Nerds. Alright, so this week's episode we have a special guest. It's not only myself and Caleb, but we have my brother, Caleb's cousin, Blaine, back again.
Hey everyone.
Blaine, we're pretty excited to have you on, and that is because you are not only a Star Wars fanatic, but a board game enthusiast.
That is very true. I love to play them.
Now, do you have a slight overbite in hair the color of strange peaches?
Fantastic.
That's an Albuquerque reference from Weird Al if you don't know that song at all. Well, Caleb, why don't you jump right into the news that we have this week?
All right, so first up is we have a new movie. Zach, I'm not sure if we actually talked about this yet, but WB, there's been rumors that they're doing a separate Joker origin movie that doesn't play into the whole continuity of the movies they've been doing. It turns out that's true. It has been officially announced. Joaquin Phoenix is signed on to play the Joker. It's going to be directed by Todd Phillips. He directed The Hangover. Supposedly, it's also going to be rated R. Now, this one's a little different because it's kind of going to be a lower budget movie, more of a character study, versus like these big explosion movies that we've been getting.
Now, this is different from like the rumored Joker / Harley Quinn, as well as I feel like there was like a third Joker movie as well.
Yeah, they don't know what they're doing, but yes, it's different from that too.
But this is actually in production, so even though when this came out, I assumed oh, it'll never actually happen, but It's like rolling.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was at, because DC's announced so many of these movies that haven't actually gone anywhere, but this one is confirmed. It's a go. It was reported by THR, so it's very reliable. So, Joaquin Phoenix actually came out and talked about it since then. He hasn't talked about it at all in the past when the rumors have come out. So that's confirmation that it is indeed happening. I'm kind of excited for this, actually. I think it could be really interesting. And it's something, I think we might have talked about this a few weeks ago. I think it'd be cool if Marvel did the same thing. Because some of the choices they've made, they can't do some storylines that I would like to see on the screen anymore. But if they made movies outside the continuity, that would be cool.
I agree. That would open up a lot of different possibilities. Now, I'm not sure how I feel about a movie just focused on the Joker. It's going to depend on how they go about showing him and what other characters they have along with him.
Now, what's that comic book where they do that? I can't remember the name of it. I mean, it's the really famous one where it's just about the Joker's backstory.
That is The Killing Joke?
Yep, Killing Joke's probably what you're thinking of.
Now, do we know what the storyline will be, if they're going to take off snippets from The Killing Joke, or is this going to be an original story?
They haven't said. I would imagine that no matter what they do, they're going to take ideas from The Killing Joke, even if they kind of expound on them a lot and make them very different. But that is kind of the seminal Joker origin story, even though we've gotten so many in the past. I would be really surprised if they pass that up. All right, moving on, we've got some exciting Star Wars Episode 9 news. In the new trilogy, we've gotten Mark Hamill, we've gotten Princess Leia and Han Solo back. Now we are also getting Billy D. Williams back in Episode 9 as Lando.
All right, Blaine, thoughts?
I was really excited when I heard this news. I was kind of hoping he'd show up in Episode 8, so seeing him in Episode 9, I'm very excited for what they're going to do with him. I just hope it's somewhat better than what they've done with a lot of the other characters that they brought back.
I'm probably more of a critic in Star Wars than you are, Blaine, or Caleb, and for that matter. But I would say from these new series we got, so specifically Han Solo, the new movie, from the comic books, and even from the old Star Wars movies, Lando is one of my favorites. And I feel like even through all those mediums, they've really portrayed him well. So I'm super excited to have him back again after the original series. And, seeing him, reading about him in the comics and seeing him in Han Solo as well.
Yeah, my only concern is Billy D. Williams' age. He was on Dancing with the Stars a couple years ago, and he just cannot move around the way he used to. And so I'm a little concerned that that will be disappointing. It's kind of like when you take your hero and you see them in real life and they're not your hero at all, you know? So I'm hoping that they'll take that into account as they're writing the film and give him a role where he's not moving around a whole lot.
I mean, that's the same with Han Solo, right? Harrison Ford in episode, what's in it, 7?
7, yeah.
7, right? You could tell when he was running that he's getting a little bit older, but I don't think that took away from his character at all.
Yeah, the only reason I bring that up for Billy D specifically is because he seems to have more issues with that than most of the people around his age. Like he kind of almost tiptoes around as he's walking. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain if you haven't seen the Dancing with the Stars stuff, but I think that if they give him like more of a general type role like they do with Leia, where he's kind of, you know, at the head of the table, not moving around a whole lot, I think that would work really well for his character.
Or they could give him an entire robot body and just use his head as the only thing that's there.
Well, I mean, in the Star Wars universe, you can get cut in half and still survive, apparently. So,
right. Except Snoke.
Well, maybe. Who knows?
Well, yeah. And in a little bit of what kind of news, Men in Black 4 started filming. Did anybody think this would happen?
No, we talked about this, I feel like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it's now happening.
Yeah, so this is supposedly a continuation. It's not a reboot, which is what I initially thought this was. It does star Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson from Thor Ragnarok, so I'm pretty excited about that. This is supposedly set in the UK, away from the US division. This is supposed to be a different branch of the same organization. So that could be interesting. It would be really cool if any of the original characters would come in and do a cameo, but I am not holding my breath for that.
Yeah, their interaction was great in Thor 3. I remember us talking about this when we first brought up the subject, so I'm looking forward to it, and I guess we'll have to see it when it comes out in theaters.
Are you guys fans of that series?
I'm just a fan of the Will Smith rap at the end.
Yes.
That was the best part of the movie. But I did enjoy 1 and 2. I don't really remember 3 because I've only seen it once. But I don't remember that I had negative reactions to it. I think I was just in the middle.
Okay.
All right, so Caleb, that covers it for news today, but that is because we are kind of transitioning our news segment into a new segment. Try saying that fast 3 times.
Well, not just a new segment. We're actually separating it out into its own show. So part of the reason we're doing this is because we want to allow more time in our weekly shows to talk about the topics that we're doing, maybe do some other recurring segments. So we're starting a new show called 'Cause It's News that will be released every week. Right now we're looking at Monday. So by the time this episode comes out, the first one will have already been out. It will have been released this past Monday. So you can go back and listen to that, or you can wait for the new one. And it's pretty much going to be like maybe a 20 or 30 minute episode where we just talk about news. So if you're just interested in staying up to date, you can check that out there.
So this will hold coverage. You can satisfy your 'Cause We're Nerds itch throughout the week, from Monday to Friday, and then from Friday to Monday as well. And so this is pretty focused on subjects we don't cover during the show. So we'll always cover a few major subjects in the news, but this will cover maybe you don't really care about Fortnite in Season 5. Well, maybe you don't really care about Dragon Ball Z. Well, you don't have to worry about that because we're just going to be sticking to the major topics here and then diving into our huge subjects, which this week is board games. So Blaine, Caleb, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So we are diving in. Yeah. We are diving into Board Game Geek's top 100. So if you don't know Board Game Geek, Blaine, I would say they're pretty, maybe the top site for board game players, board game enthusiasts.
Yeah, that's what I would say. They have lots of things, lists, forums, you can buy, sell, trade with people. It's kind of all sorts of things you would want to do with board games.
And each board game, they give you a review, and there's a ton of forums and topics about varieties and strategies. I mean, I always go there when I'm looking up reviews for board games because they always link to YouTube as well. So anyways, this top 100 isn't one that was picked by the website itself. This is a top 100 out of all their users. So as a user, you have to go in and rank it, and it's it's not just a 5-star ranking. I think they do some different.
You rank it up to 10, 1 to 10, and then from there it has to have like a certain number of votes to be placed on the top rating list. And there's something else they do, because it's not just an average rating. They go off of what they call the geek rating.
That's right, and it's not just number of votes too. So you can't just swamp, one board game with 10,000 votes and have it be the top. So it's I think a pretty good indication of the feeling of maybe the board game community and what's the top board games. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we are going to narrow in on the top 25 of the top 100 list, just because we don't want to be going on for the next 5 hours. Now, I've played some of these. Blaine's played some of these. Caleb's played a few of these.
Maybe, hopefully.
So, Blaine, why don't you go ahead? We'll dive on in right now and tell us, what is Board Game Geek's number 1?
Well, number 1 is Gloomhaven. And it's funny you mentioned that you can't just swamp it with a ton of votes, because that's kind of what happened with Gloomhaven. There's a little bit of controversy on whether this should be a number 1. The reason is because it's a 2017 game that was released on Kickstarter. I actually bought the second printing of the game, and it's very fun. It's a dungeon crawler type game. It has legacy elements. So the best way to think of this is it's D&D, but a board game.
What do you mean when you say legacy elements?
So legacy elements in this case mean you have a character and you play with that character over and over and over until they reach a certain level or a certain goal. They retire, you build a new character and keep playing with that character.
So if we were to relate this to Monopoly, it would be we play Monopoly, one person wins, the next time we play, they start out with all their properties and continue on until they've reached the maximum, and then they start over again, right?
Kind of. So like a legacy game is a game that continues on, right? And so as we talk about this list, we'll talk about legacy games and non-legacy games. Non-legacy games, like Caleb Monopoly, you play it, you clean it up, the next time you play it again, you just set out everything as it's the same, right? Now, a legacy Monopoly game would be a Monopoly game where maybe there's some stickers where you place down and they change the map. Maybe, like you just said, Caleb, the next time you play, any of the houses that you had are still kept on the board, but now they've introduced another game mechanic into the game. So a legacy game you can kind of think of as a game that continues to build upon itself, but will usually have an end where you can't jump back to the beginning and start all over because you have already used all those pieces and surprises in the box.
Okay.
Yeah. So for Gloomhaven, it's less legacy than a few of these. You can keep replaying it, especially with all of the things that have been released online to help you reset the game. But a lot of people were giving this a 10-star rating, and they had never played it. They had just ordered it on Kickstarter and wanted more people to order it, so they gave it a 10, and a lot of people were not happy about that. Now, that's calmed down since it's been about a year since the Kickstarter campaign ended, but it probably jumps really fast compared to a lot of these games and maybe shouldn't have gone up that quickly.
So, Blaine, you're the only one out of us three that actually has this game. What do you like about it? You described the game as a board game D&D.
Yeah, so it's a lot easier for newer players to get into this. If you want to try something that's kind of like D&D, you can create a character, and creating a character, you don't have to go through a big sheet of, checking these abilities and these abilities. You get a hand of cards that you get to play every round, a top card and a bottom card. So
like Killer Bunnies.
Somewhat like that. Except you're able to choose your entire hand. But the more you play, the smaller your hand gets until you reset. Your hand is one card less than you started with.
And then
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and then when you have no more cards, your character dies.
Yes, your character dies. But unlike D&D, your character doesn't die forever. They just die for that dungeon, and then they come back to life. So there's no way to permanently kill your character. You can just permanently retire your character after they've reached the goal and create a new one.
Is this a pretty easy one for newer players, or maybe just people who like board games to jump into? I mean, your wife is playing this with you.
She is. I do a lot of the setup and a lot of handling of the
Like game mechanics?
like the legacy elements.
Sure.
Yeah, the game mechanics. So if you have somebody who's running it, like a dungeon master type person, then it's very easy for anybody to just come in and learn to play in 1 or 2 times and enjoy the game.
Now, you
Okay.
said this is a Kickstarter. Is it openly available for people that want to get it?
It is openly available, but it's not common. They're just getting out more production, so I think the price is more expensive than it normally would be because people are buying it and selling it at a inflated price.
Like right now on Amazon, you can buy it, but it's gonna cost you $150.
Oof.
Steep. very, very, very steep. All right. Gloomhaven is the number 1. So what is the number 2?
Number 2, we have Pandemic Legacy Season 1.
So as you can tell from the name of the game, this is a legacy game. So actually currently Blaine and I with a couple friends are going through Pandemic Legacy Season 2, and we went through Season 1 together. It was fun.
Yeah, it was a really fun game.
Caleb, have you played the original Pandemic game before?
Yeah, I've played Pandemic and then one of like the spin-off version that's the same game but just a little different. But I don't think I've ever played Legacy.
So the Season 1 Legacy, it's basically Pandemic on steroids, right? So it's like, I think it goes through like a calendar year, and different things happen. And so like the first, January, is just a normal Pandemic game. And after that first month, everything changes. Like you add in different game mechanics and stuff.
Yeah, things go off the rails very quickly, and you have to be able to adapt and, work together to basically solve all of these problems.
So is the goal still to cure a virus? Or mini viruses?
Well, when it comes to a legacy game, you kind of have to be careful because a lot of what a legacy game is on is the mystery and surprises that come along as the game is played. But I would say when it comes to Pandemic Legacy, I'm just going to answer your question with possibly yes and no.
Okay.
But you know what? I think this is a great game if you have a group of friends. Like, you need 4 people, I think, right?
Well, you can play it with 2.
Okay.
But I think it's better with 4 people because then there's more talking about what you want to do, more arguments. Well, not as many arguments if you don't have Zach on your side.
That's true. That's true. I saved us once, and then I think I killed us once. But if you have like a group of people, you want to try out a legacy game, I think this is probably your best bet because Pandemic's a very easy game to pick up. I mean, my wife plays it as well, and she doesn't play a lot of board games. And it's very easy to pick up. It's incredibly fun together, and you can get a taste of what a legacy game is, and it'll have twists and turns that surprise you.
And this one is openly available too, right?
Yeah.
And since Season 2 is out, so Season 1, you can buy this for maybe $50. There's a listing price right now for $70 on Board Game Geek, but you can buy it for a lot less on Amazon.
The one unfortunate thing is you can't get this game used because if you play it right, you rip up cards and stuff.
Oh, so this is like a one-time game.
Yes. You can only play it one time through, which gives you either 12 to 24 individual games depending on how good or bad you are.
But then if you keep all the game pieces, which you should, you can then just use it for an original Pandemic game.
Okay.
All right, Blaine, number 3.
Number 3 is Through the Ages, a new story of civilization.
This is my life. No, I love this game. I got this game, was it last year or 2 years ago?
I think it was 2 years ago.
2 years ago. I would say this is probably my favorite board game of all time currently.
Wow.
This is a phenomenal game. If you are a fan of Civilization or Age of Empires or Rise of Nations, any of those computer games, this is the board game version of all those games. So how this game is played is it's 2 to 4 players. You each all start on the same platform, kind of same level. And then as you go kind of throughout the game, you go through 3 ages, age 1, 2, and 3. And, and you can assume that's like a Bronze Age, the Middle Age, like a Medieval Age and an Information Age. But as you're going through these different ages, you recruit heroes. You can put up your military or economics, or it's a very well done game. And what I like about it is it's all based on cards. There is no board. You don't move any units. It is simply based on cards and resource allocation.
Interesting.
I really like this game now. The first time I played, I hated it. But the reason that was that I played with Zach and our other brother, Tyler. And basically, I started out way behind, and I couldn't catch up because when you play like wars against each other, it makes sense to go after the weakest player because you can always win. So I just kept falling farther and farther behind.
You know, I kind of know what that feels like.
Do you, Caleb?
I do.
Yeah, that's a common complaint with this game, is that it snowballs. I would agree with that to some extent. I think there's some things you can do to catch up or at least hurt the other players. Maybe you won't win, but at least you're still in the game somehow. This game is great for 2 players. My friend Isaac and I play this a lot just as a 2-player game, and it is very strategic in the way you play with 2 players. 4 players can get a little long as well, but it's still fun. And this one, Through the Ages, A New Story of Civilization, is actually a updated version, a second version of the first one that came out a couple years prior. So this came out in 2015. The first one, I want to say, came out somewhere in the 2000s, early 2000s. And that one, until recently, was also located on the top 25. I think it's now dropped down to maybe the top 20. Okay, Blaine just scrolled down. It dropped down to top 28, and it came out in 2006. And so the fact that these one's on, number 3 and one's on 28 speaks very highly of this game.
So about how long does that game take to play?
If you're playing with 2 players and you've played it a lot, Isaac and I can knock it out in 2 hours. If you're playing with 4 players, 3.5.
So pretty long.
It's a pretty long game. I would not suggest this for new players because you will get a double-sided sheet of, and actually I think you get 2 double-sided sheets of all the information that you will need. But once you start figuring out how to play, like once you go through one age, everything else is easy. You just have to play it.
Do you think for people that play games a lot, it's easy to get into it, or do you still recommend having someone there that's played it before?
No, I think it would be easy to get into it. I think this is a great game. Like I said before, if you've played any one of those computer games I mentioned, or if you have a friend who loves Civilization, who loves Age of Empires, who loves Rise of Nations, and wants that nostalgia kick, or maybe you want that nostalgia kick, go to this game, and it gives you it 100%.
Awesome.
All right, Blaine, game number 4 is one that you own.
Yes, Terraforming Mars. And like Zach said, Through the Ages was his favorite game. I think Terraforming Mars is my favorite game. In this game, you are trying to terraform Mars into a livable habitat, and that's basically done by increasing 3 things. You increase the oxygen, the temperature, and you put water on Mars.
There's also a side mission you can do where you try to get all the alien babes.
What?
That is not true. That's not part of the game. Zach must have played a ripped-off version.
Now, Blaine, this is a resource management game, correct?
Yes, it's a resource management. You draw cards, and then you play those cards.
What? Wait, you draw a card and then you play it?
Well, sometimes. You have to buy the cards, so you're trying to work with how much money you have and figuring out which cards you actually want to buy, which ones you don't. It's better in the variant where you do a draft, so you actually have to pass your cards back and forth. It makes it a little more challenging.
And this is a competitive game, so like Through the Ages, you're not working on a team like you were in Pandemic Legacy. This is competitive against one another. Would you say this is like along the lines of like the movie The Martian, like with Matt Damon?
It's not quite like that. It's because you have like these corporations who are trying to basically colonize Mars.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more like Blade Runner if they were trying to colonize a planet, I guess.
So what you said this is your favorite game. What do you really like about this game? What do you really dislike about this game?
I really like how it's pretty balanced, and every time you play through, you can choose a different strategy. I dislike how, they do have a lot of cards, But once you've played through a few times, you know which cards you want to get. And that can be a little bit like some cards you just know you want to throw away because they're not good.
Yeah, and that's a problem with a lot of board games.
Yeah.
Now, I played this for the first time maybe a year ago when you got it. I would say if you play board games, this is a really easy game to pick up and learn. Blaine taught it really well. I had a lot of fun with it. I want to play it again. How would you say for like maybe newer players or players who only play like light board games?
I think it's really easy to pick up. My wife doesn't play a ton, and we went to Fantasy Flight and played this, and like the first time we played it, we loved it.
She doesn't play a ton of board games.
No,
right?
yeah, she doesn't play a ton of board games. So she picked this one up really quickly and was able to do a good job, with her strategy.
And what's the playtime on this one?
Probably an hour to 2 hours, I would say, if you know what you're doing.
And this is 2 to 4 players?
2 to 4 or 2 to 5. I don't remember because I've never played it with the max number.
Okay.
I'm sensing a theme here that all of these games are really long.
Yeah, I think it takes maybe up until number 13 before we get one that's not over 2 hours.
Okay, good to know.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of these games, I mean, it's a commitment, but I would say when it comes to board games, the really fun ones with some, some components and strategies and resource management are going to be a little longer. But that makes sense, right? A movie is like an hour and a half, even like your base movie. A video game you want to play, you're going to keep playing it because it's incredibly fun. I think that correlates into a board game. If it has all these components, it's going to be incredibly fun. Versus the more simplistic games that maybe take only 10 and 15 minutes. Sure, they're fun, but they're not going to make the top 25.
Sure.
Number 5.
Number 5 is Twilight Struggle.
So I have this game. I got it a couple years ago. Twilight Struggle is a game that came out in 2005. It is only a 2-player game, but it is an incredible game. So on one hand, one player is the United States. On the other hand, the other player is the USSR, or the Soviets. And basically, it's the Cold War. So you play this game it's like rounds, but each round's kind of like a year. And I can't remember the time frame it goes through, but it's you have cards that you play, and the cards you play and the actions you do all change the map. So the map is just the world basically, and each country is aligned either with you or neutral or with your enemy. So the whole game is trying to get all these countries aligned to you, and once you hit a certain threshold, you can gain a number of points and win the game. So this game is extremely strategic. It goes back and forth. I haven't looked into it, but I do know they have competitive play of this game. And what I love about it is I'm a history nerd. This game is all about history. So every card you have is a historical event, like Nixon, or or like the Brush War, or the Red Scare, right? So they're actual historical events. The cards themselves, the art is an actual picture of the event, and in the instruction booklet, they go through each event. So they have the picture of the card, and then they talk about the event as well. So if you're a history fanatic, this is the game to get. And I can't remember the developer on this game. Blaine, do you?
I don't remember who it is off the top of my head.
GMT? GMC?
GMT Games?
Okay, so GMT Games made this. And if you look at GMT Games, the designer, they actually make all their games are just like this. They're 2-player. There's a board. It shifts sides. But they've made some really interesting one. There's one that I want to get. It's about the American Revolution. There's one about the Afghan War. There's one where you're just 2 different presidents and you're trying to win the United States. A lot of really, really interesting games. So if you have a friend you can play this game with, it's a good game if you like history.
All right, number 6 is Star Wars Rebellion. And this is the first game that neither I nor Zach own.
Have either of you played it?
We have both played it. We played it together. It is a really fun game. It's 2-player, I think.
It is, and it's produced by Fantasy Flight. Caleb, I just took you there not too long ago.
Yep.
Yep, it's a Fantasy Flight game, and it's only 2-player as well. Super fun if you love Star Wars.
Yeah, it's kind of like a cat and mouse game where One person's the rebellion, fleeing from the Empire.
Yep. So if you are the rebels, you hide your base somewhere in the galaxy, and the map's just like the galaxy. If you are the Empire, your goal is to try to find them. So the Empire has superior forces, where the rebels, you're just trying to kind of hide, shift your base around, and then do guerrilla warfare. It really gets the feel of Star Wars. It's a new game. It came out in 2016. They also have an expansion that introduces all the elements of Rogue One that I've wanted to try. But if you like Star Wars, which you do, Blaine, and you have a buddy to play with, I would say this is a must-have.
Yep, I agree.
And what's the play length or the play time on that one?
Probably 2 hours.
Maybe an hour and a half.
I think I crushed Zach really quickly when we played.
You did.
So the might of the Empire came down like a hammer of steel.
He luckily found my base on the second turn and just destroyed me.
Does it use miniatures?
Yes.
It does. It uses miniatures and also a few cards, but it's mainly miniature based.
Okay.
Reminds me of Star Wars Risk.
Yes, it does.
Oh,
it's like a Star Wars Risk on steroids.
Yeah.
Because you can actually have the Death Star and the Death Star 2 at the same time.
That sounds amazing.
All right, 7 on our list is Scythe.
This is a very new game. It came out a couple years ago, 2 years ago, and it was a Kickstarter. And after it came out, I believe it won the 2016 Game of the Year.
I think that's right.
I think it's either between this or Blood Rage, which I believe came out in the same exact date or a year before or after as well. Anyway, Scythe is a very fun game. It takes place in Europa, which is basically a dystopian Europe. And you gather resources and you have giant mechs. What's not to love?
Interesting.
Yes. It's a very fun game, and it's very thematic. So as you're playing, you get to see these cards and read things about it, and it feels kind of like you're there, like you're actually have these decisions to make, whether you want to feed the peasants or slaughter them all.
Because you make choices. You can kind of be good. Yeah, it's like you come across a path of peasants. Do you want to give them food? Well, it's going to cost you food from your resources, but then you gain, victory points. Or you can just let them be. You can leave them there, which lets you move one. Or you can slaughter them all, which is going to make you, lose some victory points. But on the other hand, you're going to gain, I don't know, some slaves from their kids or something. Yeah.
Okay.
The artwork is incredible. I've always, any review always mentions that as a positive. The theme is incredible. If you want a game with a lot of players, I think you could play this 5 players. You can get an expansion for 6 players. But you don't want to have to keep tabs on every other player. I would say this is the game to get because you don't really have to keep tabs on every other player. It's very focused on what you are doing. Now, you kind of need to know what other people are doing as well, but it's really just do what you do. And when you come into contact with another player, that's when you can decide if you want to battle. But there's hardly a lot of battling in this. It's more just doing what you're going to do.
Number 8 is Terra Mystica.
So my friend Isaac has this game. This is a resource management game. I played it once. I don't think either of you have played this, correct?
Nope.
I have not.
It's fun. I would say it's along the same lines of maybe Agricola, Guatemala.
Yeah.
Whatever those games are.
A lot of these are resource management games, I'm noticing.
Yeah, and that's something specific to European games or what's the style of games?
Euro games?
Euro games, yeah. Which kind of introduced resource management as a play style.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's very different than Ameritrash, which is basically risk type game.
Exactly.
That's what they call it.
It's
Just tell us what you think, Blaine.
because it's simple, right? Those games are simple. They're easy. They don't have
Shoots and ladders.
Exactly. They don't have a lot of moving components versus Euro games are a little more complex, but that's because they rock.
So, for people that aren't really into the scene, could you equate Euro games to kind of the new tabletop board game movement? And this Ameritrash games are kind of like the old school, your Monopoly, your Risk, those types of games?
For the most part, yes.
But it's a movement that's been happening for 10?
Yeah, probably since the early 2000s.
Yeah, a slow shift. I would say when you think of Euro games, a common one that you've probably heard of is Catan.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Everybody's kind of heard of Catan. That's a Euro game, so...
All right, moving on. The next one we have at number 9 is Great Western Trail.
None of us have played this, we'll be honest. It's a Western themed one. I looked at it because I'm like, if this is anything like Westworld, this would be great. It's not. It's basically you just dig for oil. And so I put the game back and never looked at it again.
I think it looks interesting and worth a play, but I just haven't gotten around to it.
What's up next?
Number 10, we have the Gaia Project, which is in the same line as Terra Mystica. It looks basically the same, but in space.
And it was 2017. I'm not sure if it was a Kickstarter or not.
Is it Gaia or Gaia?
Moving on. Number 11.
Number 11 is The Seventh Continent. Neither of us have played this because it's a Kickstarter game that came out in 2017.
So last year.
You can't get it anywhere because, well, anywhere for less than like $500 because it's everybody who bought it is playing it. And it's also a legacy game. It's not like Gloomhaven, but it's kind of similar in the feel.
So, we don't know much about it. we can't speak into it.
Number 12 is The Castles of Burgundy. This is a game I own, and this is somewhat different than the previous games. In this one, you have a couple die, and you roll the dice, and based on the numbers, those are the actions you get to take. So it's a little bit more luck-based than some of these others, but it also provides a change of pace.
So this is like dice allocation, not resource allocation.
Exactly.
Is this in the same vein as like the castles of Mad King Ludwig or whatever? Or
don't think so.
The Palace. I can't
but
remember exactly.
I haven't played that one.
Okay.
So
it's a fun game if you want to build some stuff, but I think it's a long game too, right?
It's not that long. I mean, I don't think it's 2 hours. I think it's only like an hour and a half.
Okay.
So we're getting shorter in the game length.
Woo! Which brings us to our next one, number 13.
Yes, Seven Wonders Duel. And this is probably the first one that's like 30 minutes in length. So Seven Wonders Duel is a 2-player version of Seven Wonders, which is a popular board game.
Mm-hmm. And that game, Seven Wonders, is a great game. Like our family played it together.
Yeah.
Like my mom played it. I don't think she really understood it, but she played it. But it's a good game to fairly easily pick up, and it has a history kind of thematic experience if you like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is one of the few games on the list that, well, not this particular one, but the original I've played.
Yeah, so it's somewhat similar. A lot of the cards are the same, but in Seven Wonders Duel, you stack all of the cards some are face up, some are face down in like a pyramid, and you have to select up the pyramid based on which cards are available, and you get those cards or you buy them, and you go back and forth doing that for three rounds, just like in the original Seven Wonders.
Okay. So Blaine, Caleb and I have played the original Seven Wonders, but not Duel. So would you say this is basically just a condensed version? Like it's the same thing, just a little condensed? I mean, obviously the game mechanics are
different.
different.
There are a few different rules, but it keeps the same feel. I actually like it better than Seven Wonders, because in Seven Wonders, sometimes when you have a lot of players, it feels like there aren't many options. You get cards once, maybe twice. In this one, you're looking at what your opponent has and determining, is it better to keep this card, trash it, buy it? What do you want to do with it? Basically to keep them from getting it or to boost your own hand.
So this is kind of like One Night Ultimate Werewolf versus Ultimate Werewolf.
No.
Maybe?
In terms of like how it's condensed down.
I've never played Ultimate Werewolf One Night Werewolf.
Okay.
So maybe. Caleb, but this next game is another game that you have played, and that is number 14.
War of the Ring, 2nd edition.
Oh,
so
goodness.
This came out in 2012. I got this at a Christmas or maybe a birthday. We were down south visiting Caleb. We whipped this out. I believe this game took us 6 hours.
6 to 8 hours the first time, and then we were crazy enough to play it again.
Yeah. The second game took us only down to 4 hours. This game is amazing. I love it. It just took us a long time because I sped through the rule book, which is like a 50-page rule book.
Yep.
I don't want to talk too much about this. It's a Lord of the Rings. It's very thematic. If you like Lord of the Rings, this is a great game. It's kind of 2 players, but you can play it with 4 players if you split it up. There's some expansions out there, which I've gotten. If you want an in-depth review of this, which I highly, highly suggest, go ahead, go to YouTube, go to Sit Up and Shut Up. Sit Up, Shut Up.
You don't even know.
Oh, no! Give me a second.
Shut up and sit down?
Yes! Wait, no?
I do remember playing this game. It was very fun, but it also took forever.
Yeah.
So I think I only played it that once with you guys, and that was the only time I've played.
Yeah, the first time we played it, we actually played it over the course of 2 days. I think the first day we played like 3 or 4 hours, and then we finished it the next day. This is not for casual gamers at all.
This is not. No, this is a fun game. What I was talking about was Shut Up and Sit Down. They're a group of guys that do board game reviews. They have an amazing 20-minute review of this game, and they hit the nail on the head. Go check that out. That's all I have to say about that. Now, the next 3 games are all, I feel, kind of in the same vein, which is 15, 16, and 17.
So 15 is Caverna, the Cave Farmers. And this actually is very similar to number 17, Agricola. Because Caverna is a predecessor. No, I think Agricola is the predecessor. So Agricola came first, and then...
Nope. Agricola came out in 2007.
And
the Cave Farmers came out in 2013.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So, I have played Agricola, but I have not played Caverna. Caverna?
And I'm pretty sure 16, the middle one, is Puerto Rico, and it's kind of the same thing. I think they're all resource management.
They are, but Agricola and Caverna are basically the same game, just a little bit different. Puerto Rico is more different than those other 2.
How are all 3 of these games different from the other 14 resource management games?
I think
you're a farmer in Agricola, so you're not a farmer in any of the others.
Yeah, so I think what makes these 3 different, I can't really speak to Puerto Rico because I haven't really played it, but what makes Agricola and the Cave Farmers different is that you're a small little farmer, and it's all about that. It's about, like, your farm. If you like Farmville on Facebook, this might be the game for you. Back in 2005, that was your jam.
So a lot of these resource management games are very similar. What sets a bunch of these apart is the thematic, background to some of these.
Yeah.
Or a few of the, like, for instance, the Castles of Burgundy. What sets that one apart is you're using dice to roll and decide your actions. It's small things like that set them apart.
So if a new person were coming in and they were trying to figure out which one to play, really what they should be focusing on is the thematic element, the number of players, and how long it takes to play to choose which one.
Yes, and I would say maybe even in that order. I think that's a good order. First, what's your theme? Because if you don't like the theme, you're not going to play this.
Yeah.
Okay, it's going to be boring. You're going to hate it. Pick a theme you like. Do you like history? Do you like mechs? Do you like Dungeons and Dragons? Do you like Lord of the Rings? What do you like? Second, who do you have? Is it just 2 players? Do you have a group of people that can play with you? And finally, are you willing to sit down for just 2 hours? Do you want a shorter game? Is it okay if you sit down for 4 hours? I think that is a very good kind of regulation of what game to buy, Caleb.
Okay.
The next game's number 18.
Viticulture Essential Edition. I have never played this.
So this is a game that I actually showed Michaela. She kind of wants to play it. So we're just waiting for it to come out on a platform where we can play it for free before we buy it. But it is basically just about wine. You have vineyard, so a lot of people on the pictures I've seen is you just get a glass of wine, you play this game, and you drink your wine.
That makes a lot of sense to me, Zach.
Number 19?
Arkham Horror, the card game. Now this is based on the Arkham Horror game, which Fantasy Flight also released.
Yep.
But all it is cards. So you make your own little deck of cards, and you play scenarios, sometimes on a team with, I think it's 2 players, but you could also play this solo, and you play against the game itself.
So this is cooperative.
Yeah. So there are different scenarios that you play through, and a ton of expansions that add more scenarios, more cultists, Cthulhu, that type of thing.
And this goes back to like that 2-hour playtime, right?
No. This one can be like 30 minutes to an hour. Okay. I mean, if you're just playing a single scenario, and it's Lovecraft themed.
Number 20.
Mage Knight, board game.
Okay, this is one I have. Blaine, have you played this before?
I have played it with you.
Okay,
yes.
so this is a pretty fun game. I really like it. It has a lot of different components. It's kind of like a D&D maybe. So you set out a map with hexes, and it's always different based on the hexes. And then there's enemies on the board. And you also get to pick out just one miniature hero, and your hero goes around the board fighting, and gaining prestige and gaining honor and gaining reputation. And during that, you also build a deck of cards. So that's like your hand and the actions you can take. So it all starts the same with each player, except 1 or 2 cards based on your hero. But as you play, you get different cards, spell cards, action cards, hero cards, and you get to kind of choose that and how to build out your deck and just to gain points. So it's a fun game if you just kind of, again, want to focus on what you do, because the heroes don't really battle each other. They just explore the world. So it's a fun game if you just want to explore the world, have some fun with a friend. It is technically competitive, but it can play cooperatively as well.
Number 21 is Concordia.
I've never played it.
Me either.
I don't even know what it's about. Caleb,
Me neither.
Concordia? No way!
Number 22 is Mansions of Madness, 2nd edition.
So, Caleb, this is the game I've told you should play. You look at the art that they use for the title card, Mansions of Madness. You hate it, so you refuse to play this game based on
is this
art.
the one that uses bleeding cowboys for their name?
Yes, it is.
All right, guys. So, small rant. There's a font called Bleeding Cowboys. I know this because I used to do a lot of graphic design work, and it was really cool back in the day. And then everybody started using it, and now it's like the worst thing ever. And so anything I see this on, I always point out, like Courtney knows it by name. I'll just randomly be walking down somewhere and be like, Bleeding Cowboys. And she's like, what? Oh, okay. And we just continue walking. So that's that story.
So this is a super fun game. It's also kind of a somewhat Lovecraftian theme, but also some more of like a horror investigation theme. This is fully cooperative. And what I would say about this is probably a different game from the rest of the 21 we've just talked about. And the reason is the game plays you because you use an app. So you solve a murder mystery or some type of mystery. You join together with other players. You build the board as you play, and you have some miniatures, and you use a computer or a tablet, and it tells you what to do. This is very thematic, very thematic. It has music that goes along with it. There are puzzles built in. So like if you have to solve a lock, sometimes you have to go on and like figure out the puzzle on your phone. It's very interactive. It's one of my favorite games. And it does come with a set list of stories. So I think there's only like 4 to 6 in the base game, but you can buy more and buy more expansions. I haven't played through all the stories, but I love this game, would highly recommend it. You can play this one player. I think this one is the first games where you can actually do one player as well. From those listed top 25 we've talked about. Great game.
You could play one player on Arkham Horror, the card game as well.
Oh, and I guess Mage Knight you can as well. Okay, I take that all back. It's still a great game, but it's a great one-player game as well.
Number 23 is Blood Rage.
Okay, so on Board Game Geek, it looks like this came out in 2015. So this was the 2015 Game of the Year. This was also Kickstarter. Caleb, the same company that made Rising Sun, the game we've played, made Blood Rage.
Is it pretty much the same game?
No.
Not really.
Not really, no. So it's you're Vikings, and you're trying to take over
The 9 worlds?
the 9 realms.
9 realms, yeah.
And so you're kind of battling each other for that. So it's miniature based. The miniatures are a little similar to Rising Sun, but they're very detailed. They have monsters that are detailed, which is amazing. But it also, you do a draft of cards to start off with, and that determines kind of your actions for the game as well. Or not really your actions, but it determines what advantages you will gain from your actions, kind of what your play style will be. Yeah. And you can change that up. It's a very fun game. It's short. I want to say it's only 45 to an hour 30 maybe.
Yeah, it's not very long.
It's not very long. It's 2 to 4 to 5 players. It's a great game.
Yep.
Awesome.
24 is Mechs vs. Minions.
I've looked this game up. It came out in 2016. I want to say it's a Kickstarter, but I'm not sure. It looked fun. It's Mechs versus Minions. It's a miniature game.
Yeah, I want to play this, but it's very expensive because it's a lot of miniatures.
Yes.
So I haven't been able to find anywhere to test it out yet.
So it must be a Kickstarter game. So Kickstarter games usually are very expensive when they come out within the first 2 years and have a ton of miniatures.
And finally, number 25 is Orleans.
Can you say that again?
Or Orleans. It's the name of that French town.
Orléans.
Like New Orleans?
No. You have to say it like you're French.
Orléans.
Orléans.
This looks interesting. It looks kind of like a medieval game where you assemble farmers, merchants, and knights.
Marchants?
It looks like there's a lot of moving pieces.
It looks like a lot of pieces.
We just opened up a picture, and it looks like you have a player board where you move pieces, and on the player board there's like 8 sections, and then you have 2 more player boards next to your player board that has more pieces, and then there's a player board in the middle that has all pieces, and then there's another player board.
Looks like 2 more player boards.
2 more player boards that has pieces, and then there's a map where you move stuff around as well.
I'm going to go ahead and say that this isn't for newbies.
This
looks fun.
The art and the detail maybe, but I might stay away from this game if you're a newbie. However, looks like one I want to check out as well.
So, neither of you guys have played this one?
No.
We have not. But Caleb, that kind of rounds out our top 25 board games. But we said this is a top 100, so we're just going to quickly do a few honorable mentions, because number 26 is a game Blaine owns, which is
Star Wars Imperial Assault. I was kind of hoping this would make the top 25, but it does not. This one is a miniature fighting game. You basically draft a army of people you want for a certain amount of points, and you just fight another person. You can also play a campaign mode where one person fights 4 and they kind of run a scenario.
It's fun. We've played it together. Number 32 is Pandemic Legacy Season 2. I don't think it's as good as Season 1.
It's not as good, but it's still pretty fun. We're really bad at it. We've lost a lot.
Caleb, you keep talking about how our games take forever. There's a game on here. It's number 33. It's called Eclipse. It came out in 2011. This game is, I'm pretty sure, the longest board game in history. You literally have to sit down for an entire day. So I had friends in college. You would sit down and you would play it from 8 in the morning until about 8 p.m.
Ooh.
They do have a Kickstarter out there if you're interested in something like that, with that game on there. Number 34 is Kingdom Death Monster. All I'm going to say about that is if you hate your life, go ahead and get it. It costs about $500. It's a Kickstarter game. Number 36 is Robinson Crusoe Adventures on the Cursed Island. This is a great game. I own it. Mm-hmm. It is cooperative, and you basically have to survive on an island together. And so it's resource management, but the resources are lacking. So you have to choose, are you going to build a shelter for the storm, or are you going to eat food? You have to choose one or the other, and you can't do both.
39 is Azul. That's the game we played that only took about 30 minutes. Very simple. It's the top abstract game, so think chess. That one's fun. 45 is Codenames. That's a great one to play with lots of people.
Codenames is fantastic.
It's a party game. That's probably, this is your most accessible game. I play this with people who have never really played board games other than Monopoly. Mm-hmm. So it's a fun one. Number 53 is Rising Sun, Caleb. Came out in 2008. It's a very brand new game. We just played that.
Did you say 2008?
Yep.
You did.
I did. 2018. Thanks for catching that. I don't know what I was talking about. Some more honorable mentions.
59 is Dominion Intrigue. There's a lot of Dominion games.
Yes.
Lots of expansions. Caleb, you've played those games. Those are
several
fun.
of them.
Number 63 is Star Wars X-Wing. Have you played that before?
Yeah, we played it really briefly. I don't think we played a whole game. This
is a fantasy flight game. It's a money pit. I'll just be honest. It's super fun to play because it's like dogfighting. They also have Armada, which is like a blown up version of that. Fantasy Flight's now really doing something where they're just trying to strip you of money, but it's a fun game nonetheless.
66 is a bit of a different game, Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. So in this one, you just kind of follow a case. So you say, let's go talk to this person. You read what they have to say, then you go talk to somebody else. And once you figured out the murder, you go talk to Sherlock Holmes and tell him he asks a few questions and you answer them. And that one's interesting because you can only play it a few times because of the scenarios.
Blaine, how about 76? This is also one that you can introduce to
Santorini.
people.
This is also an abstract game along with Azul. And this one's really fun. You move a character, you build a tower. Move a character, build a tower. And the idea is to get to the top of the tower and you win. So it's a very simple one, very fun, but also it takes a lot of strategy.
Number 82, we talked about War of the Ring. Not 82. 83 is actually War of the Ring First Edition, so that they both make it on here. I do want to mention number 84 is Pandemic Iberia. That's a game I also have. If you like Pandemic, this is a really good, different version of it. The art is incredible, and if you're kind of tired of Pandemic, I think this breathes new life into that game as well. I think 92 is a good one to mention. This is a game that my wife plays. She is a board game fanatic now because I have got her hooked on Ticket to Ride. Number 92 is Ticket to Ride Europe. Kids play this game. We've watched My Boss's Kids, and we've played this game with them. They have a ton of maps and versions. I would say Ticket to Ride Europe's probably one of the best ones over America, or some of the harder ones. So definitely check out Ticket to Ride if you're new to board games. It's a great game to play. And finally, a final honorable mention is 99 is Captain Sonar and the World of Tomorrow. Or maybe just Captain Sonar. That's a new game, and it's like live Battleship is the best way I can say. Is that you're on teams of 4, but you can play with just 2 on each team. And you're in a battleship, and you have to chase down the other battleship. But it happens at the exact same time. Like, you play it live. So it's very interesting, the interactions that happen, and like how you have to listen to the other team, but also track where they are. It's super fun, super fun. I've only played it a couple times. My family's gotten into fights over it, but that's okay because it is incredibly fun. And that rings out the top 25/top 100 board games on Board Game Geek.
Now, I think it's important to recognize we had an episode, I think 2 weeks ago, that was Kickstarter themed, right? We were talking about Kickstarter, and one of the things we talked about was how you can find some really great board games on there. And I think that was just really highlighted by the top 25 that we talked about, because I'd say over half of those you guys were like, oh, this one was on Kickstarter, this one was on Kickstarter. And if you're into that, you should definitely check out Kickstarter. But again, be careful.
Exactly. I mean, that's why I get board games on Kickstarter. You just make sure you read it. Make sure you are careful as well.
Sometimes they'll have second printings, and those are a lot safer to get. I got Gloomhaven on a second run they had, because I could look up all the reviews, what people were saying. I knew that they knew what they were doing when printing it. So I felt a lot safer when I ordered that one.
Yeah, and so, hopefully you have gotten a taste on what's the top 25 board games and some games maybe you're interested in, you want to check out. Just a few things I would say. If you want to check out a game before you do, go to boardgamegeek.com. There are reviews, YouTube videos. It's great, to watch stuff. Sit Down and Shut Up. I've already mentioned them. They are a great resource on YouTube. They're funny, so it's really interactive, but they're very in-depth on how they review it. Very entertaining. And finally, I would go with what Caleb said. If you're looking into buying a board game, first, look at thematics, what you're interested. Second, look at the number of players. Third, look at the time, you want to put in. And I would say fourth, maybe look at relatively like how in-depth you want to get, if that makes sense. If it looks like something that's way over your head, then don't get it. Start with something easy. Instead of jumping into Gloomhaven that has 1 billion pieces, maybe start with Seven Wonders Duel.
And Board Game Geek has a good rating. It's weight.
Oh, true, yeah.
And this tells you it's like how complex it is, how long it takes to play, how much luck's involved, all sorts of things. And it's a scale from 1 to 5. So if you want just kind of a quick overview, you could look at that.
And it also tells you what's the best number of players, the playing time, average playing time, as well as the ages. So if you have kids, check that out, and it tells you, is it appropriate for kids, or are they going to get bored after 5 minutes?
All right, so now it's time for What You Been Up To. So, Zach, what you been up to?
Well, last night I was at the drive-in, and I saw the movie Skyscraper.
Oh, how was it?
Well, I didn't really have a choice of the movies that were there. It was a cheesy Die Hard. I mean, it was trying to make an homage to Die Hard, obviously. It was just a cheesy Die Hard, because it opens up in Minnesota, and with this guy, William, he's a police officer, I don't even know, SWAT guy. His leg gets blown off, and then it goes to Hong Kong where they have the skyscraper, and he's doing like security for it or what. I don't even really know, to be honest. And then it catches fire. There's bad guys, and it jumps into the action fast. It's a good action movie, it's just so cheesy. Like, on one point, it has Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. It zooms up on him, and he does, like, the corniest monologue ever about family. And I'm like, is this a Fast and Furious movie? Like, where am I? And so, using your ranking, I would say, if you're a fan of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, if you like cheesy action movies, maybe go to a $5 movie. Maybe. If not, just don't see it. You don't need to see it. I will say the one thing that was kind of cool is that he was an amputee in the movie, and so I think how they used his prosthetic leg was very interesting. But there's just only so many times you can go, oh no, he's hanging from a skyscraper, will he fall? Oh no, he's hanging from a ledge, will he fall? Oh no, he's hanging from the same skyscraper but on the different end, will he fall? It's like they use that like 8 times, and you're like,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This is getting old after the second time.
That's kind of what it looked like to me anyway, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah, so don't see it unless you're a fan of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and family.
All right, Blaine, what have you been up to?
Let's see. Recently, I just read Batman number 50, The Wedding of Catwoman and Batman.
Ooh.
All right, so without spoiling it, how
No, you
was
can
it?
spoil it. You can spoil it.
It was not my favorite.
Okay.
And I'm going to go into spoiler territory now. So if you don't want to hear, skip this part.
But it's okay because it sucks.
They do not get married because Catwoman decides that if she made Batman happy, he would stop being Batman. So she's like, I can't make you happy by marrying you, so I'm not going to marry you, so you're sad forever. What? Like I said, it was really bad. The only thing I liked is the way they went about it. It's 2 pages of like a regular comic and then 2 pages where it's basically a full art page. They got different artists to do a drawing of Catwoman and Batman together, and then they're writing notes to each other throughout the entire thing. And so like Catwoman's notes are on one side and Batman's are on the other side. So I thought that was really cool. But then the notes amount to Batman being like, I love you so much, Catwoman. And Catwoman being like, I'm sorry, goodbye. So,
Wow.
Yeah, it was very disappointing.
That seems way out of character for her.
Yeah, they also decided they were going to get married on a rooftop with like a drunk judge so he wouldn't remember. And then Alfred was the only person, and some random person for Catwoman was there. And nobody else.
Why didn't they just have Alfred marry them?
I don't know why. Like, it's really easy to get, a license to marry somebody. So I'm not sure why
it's not like it's going to be a real marriage, because they're not going to turn in a marriage certificate that says Catwoman and Batman.
That's true. It was not well thought out. It was clearly a publicity stunt that didn't even last. At least they could have gotten married for a few comics, but nope.
And DC actually spoiled it before the comic came out. They actually released something or whatever and spoiled it.
So I was very disappointed in that.
Yeah.
So Caleb, what you been up to?
All right, so before I get into my actual thing, I just wanted to mention real quick, on our Kickstarter episode, we also talked about Yooka-Laylee and how terrible that was. I got an email like yesterday. Apparently, they're still trying to fulfill the stretch goals
No!
that they set. I didn't even know. But anyway, my actual pick for this week is actually a board game. It's a board game I bought while I was in Minnesota. It's called Starship Samurai. Now, the reason I picked this up to begin with is on the cover, it looked like it had Gundams on it. I was like,
yeah,
that looks cool. What is that? And so I did end up buying it. We played it at Fantasy Flight, actually. And it was a lot of fun. So basically, you have these little samurai miniatures and you get to place them in like a world, an area, and the goal is to conquer that area and get victory points. So the winner has the most victory points. It's very, very strategic. It's not hard. The instructions make it seem a little bit harder than it actually is. It's very easy to pick up, but every single thing you do can have major ramifications. So because of that, the game can sometimes take a little longer. I just played it with Zach, so it was just us two. I think it took us maybe an hour, 45 minutes.
Maybe. I mean, we opened up the package and read the rules and did all that as well. I mean, it was fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. If you had 4 players, I could see this taking an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending.
2 hours.
Yeah. It really depends on how strategic people want to be. Because if you just laid stuff down, you could be done with this in 30 minutes. But if you're really thinking about everything, it takes a while. But a lot of fun. Miniatures look great. I'm actually painting them. First time I've painted miniatures. Great buy. And it's super new too. Like, I think it had been out 2 weeks when I bought it.
Yep. That's what the attendant said, that it was just out for 2 weeks. So the cards actually show how the miniatures are like painted, because the miniatures just come in just a regular grayscale miniature.
Yep.
So you painted them like the cards, or you painted them different?
I'm painting them like the cards. I've only done one so far, but I'm doing my best to make it as close to the cards as possible, which is hard considering how detailed the art is.
That's pretty sweet, and yeah, it's a fun game. It's kind of like Rising Sun, which is a game we've played, but maybe a less involved version of that.
Yeah. And I would actually say, if you're new to board games, maybe not start there. But if you like board games, you could totally go into this easily. I think it's up to 4 players.
Well, Caleb and Blaine, he might not be on the top 25 board game list, but do you know who is on the top 25 artists of our generation list?
No,
Taylor
actually.
Poole.
Oh!
Come on, Taylor Poole. Go ahead and check out. He's making a new intro music for our podcast. It is TAYLOORPOOLE. I added a couple of these in there, but you know who
extra
you know you know who he is. It's TaylorPoolMusic.com.
And while you're waiting on our next episode, where we can make more mistakes, please check out our friends over at CNC Power Hour, where they stream Magic the Gathering and video games throughout the week.
And as always, go ahead and check out our website at causewe'renerds.com. And Blaine, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Woo! Thanks for listening to 'Cause We're Nerds. Stay up to date with all the latest nerdy news and podcast drops by following us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. You can also leave us feedback or comments at causewe'renerds@gmail.com. That's CUZWERENERDS@gmail.com. And as always, if you enjoy this podcast, we would love it and appreciate it if you could give us a 5-star review on iTunes. With Comic-Con right around the corner, join us next week as we discuss all the major reveals, trailers, and insights into the nerdiest get-together of the year. So until then, stay nerdy.